Action.
What takes place in hard times and still shimmers with glamour, with characters, both in front and in back of the camera.
Complete rehearsal.
What gets pounded, painted, welded, and scored,
Okay, stand by.
and has stained glass ceilings and marbled floors? What's crowded with extras, actors, and arcs?
A little closer.
What smiles and frowns and bellows and barks? What has chases in strange places and magical things?
Coming down.
A bald billionaire and an orphan that sings.
The sun will come out tomorrow, so you gotta hang on till tomorrow.
What works all day long and on into the night?
The party goes on forever.
Let's do it once more.
What takes lots of takes to get it just right? What's years in the making? It starts with an A.
Of course, it's Annie. It's only a dream away.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back to the show.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh, man.
Do I have a history with this movie?
I have a history with this movie. I have a lot to say about how I revisited this movie. But,
Absolutely.
Well, I'm excited to get into it.
As am I. Listeners, my name's Pete.
And I'm Scott, and these are the movies that made us gay.
They are.
Welcome back to the show.
Yes.
My friend Brad, welcome to the show. Third time on.
Brad, welcome back.
Thank you, guys.
Our
Happy to be here.
little scrappy orphan.
Is Brad the scrappy orphan?
Third time's the charm.
I don't get it.
Last here for View from the Top, which
Oh, boy.
I think is possibly the worst movie that we've ever discussed on the show.
Always coming at us with the bangers.
But we had you here today to talk about Annie, directed by John Huston, released May 21st, 1982. So this is a movie that I had always had in mind that, well, clearly we have to talk about the 80s Annie. Because I think that this movie, with kids of a certain age, you just grew up watching this movie.
Sure.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brad and I are close in age, but I think I'm older because I do have a memory of seeing this in the theater.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you would be a little older. I
Yeah.
am a product of 1982 as well.
Oh, there. Okay.
A few months before this movie, so I would have probably first seen it on TV or a
Okay.
video.
Yeah,
a
yeah.
year or two later.
Okay, then I'm a good 5 years on you. I do have memories of seeing this in the theater. But I was really young. I was like 5. You know.
Yeah. Do you remember at all what theater you saw it at?
Oh, theater? No.
No, I mean, you would have been pretty little.
Yeah, no. Just looking out the window, who knows? But I remember specific things from it. I remember being kind of creeped out, but I was just very much like, whenever Annie and the girls were not on screen, I was just like, where are the kids? I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, Miss Hannigan, Rooster, all of that. I was just like, what's going on? Loving my sister and I, obsessed with Punjab and the Asp. Obsessed with Punjab and the Asp. And also that actor who was Punjab, because of, I don't know if it was because of Annie or because of other things, he was kind of became a cultural figure at the time. So he was kind of all around pop culture. And it was just a thing that I was so young. This was a kid's movie. They were just like, let's take the kids to it. But it's a different I mean, yes, it's a musical. Yes, there are kids in it, but there's a lot of stuff that I was just like looking around, just like, all right, what is going on here? And
I think that this movie kind of struggles with its adaptation a little bit.
Right.
When putting it on screen.
But it was a huge pop cultural phenomenon at the time. So I think that's why my family was just like, yes, let's take the kids to go see Annie. We had not seen, it in in the actual theater on stage or anything like that. But it was such a big pop cultural hit that's why I have. That's why they took us,
especially with like grandparents at the time that would have grown up with the radio
program. Yes, and that
with the radio program,
and that's something that I didn't know about until later on, watching A Christmas Story and being like, "What the hell?" Annie was on the radio.
Old comic strip from the 20s.
Yeah,
Harold Gray.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Brad, you said you remember seeing it as a child and being captivated by it.
Yeah, I would say definitely captivated by it. I would say for me it was kind of like introduction to Broadway.
Sure.
It's like Broadway for kids, not to belittle the arrangement or the music or anything like that, but kind of in the same vein as Sound of Music or Peter Pan, one of those that perhaps your parents aren't taking you to Phantom of the Opera or Les Miserables at that time, but these were certain things that were musicals for children, I guess. So it would have been my first intro, exactly, on video to just kids singing. And what my memory, it's interesting you say, my memory would have been Miss Hannigan and that kind of like the bawdy woman that it really introduced me to. And I would say also the other indelible thing would be the concept before I knew it of like child stardom and like how at that point how fun it must be to be doing these big musicals and singing and dancing. And so I would say those were my two hooks into it.
Scott, what about you?
I mean, this is one of those movies that I don't even have a memory of watching just because it's always been in your life. I never actually remember first watching Annie. I mean, I would have had to have watched this probably on the Disney Channel when I was a kid, just for some of their night programming that I would have had to watch Annie there. But I definitely remember a vinyl of the soundtrack at my grandma's house that my sister and I loved to look at. And it was one of those old vinyls that folds out and there was color photos of the movie. I always loved that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The big record. Yeah.
Yep.
And the record cover. Love that.
I mean, something very movie about it. So,
yes. Oh, absolutely. You want to talk about Broadway for kids, though? Well, I don't know if I've told this story before, but when I have an older sister, and my parents, I have young parents, so when my sister got into college, she took a theater class and got some assignments to go see some shows around town. And we discovered that she got a student discount for these tickets. And being in LA and being that it was the early 90s, oh, mama, we saw the Phantom of the Opera.
How many times?
5. My younger brother, who's younger than me. And you want to talk about kids theater, he was obsessed with the Phantom of the Opera.
Richard's around my age.
He's in 1986. He was born in 1986. Yep. He had a Phantom of the Opera Halloween costume one year. He went as the Phantom with the mask and everything. And he is not gay, by the way. He is straight, married to a woman, and all of that. But my mom was just like, "Oh, okay, we're in LA. We can go see these shows." So with my sister's student ID in 1991. We saw the Phantom, a show. We took out the whole family, my cousins, everybody got to go with these discount, Dorothy Chandler. We went to the Dorothy Chandler. We were like patrons of the arts, boy. We went so many damn times. I forgot what else we saw. We saw an opera of what's the Roald Dahl, the Mr. Fox, the stop motion.
Fantastic
Mr.
Fox.
We saw an opera of the Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, crazy.
That's such an LA thing.
Yeah. So we were like, we did this whole theater, but by this time I'm in junior high. So I'm like post Annie and all of that. But I do, I've always had an affinity for musicals, and I as a kid, I remember seeing this, and like I said, I was very much like, give me the girls, give me these like flipping and a flopping. These girls are bucking and like,
twirling off that fire escape.
Yeah, and that shit I was obsessed with. Then Annie became kind of this like cult legendary movie because, again, growing up in LA, I don't know if it was just me and my like faggoty like being into movies and TV sensibilities, but I always had this like who's who of like actors and things like that. And then you started to rewatch Annie, and then my sister and I are going, bitch, that is Martika.
Yep.
And then we started noticing all the little girls that were.
So who's in that first
the
big
orphanage?
Who's in that first big number?
You got Martika, Toy Soldiers, Kids Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
You got Amanda Peterson from Better Off from Can't Buy Me Love. I think her name's Amanda Peterson.
Yeah.
From Can't Buy Me Love.
Wow.
I mean, the legend is that Alyssa Milano's somewhere in there, but I think that got a little conflated with her auditions for the Broadway version.
It could be true, though, because it was filmed at Monmouth College. So
yeah,
right.
It was around Jersey.
There's a lot of kids running around in that scene.
There's a lot of uncredited girls running around back there, so she could be in there.
I always thought Stacey Ferguson was somewhere, but I think that she would have been a little too young. That's what you said.
She would have been young, but she did
Yeah.
sing up on Toy Soldiers.
Oh,
I had to explain
the Kids Inc. connection.
I had to explain to a straight coworker when we were talking about Fergie because, spoiler alert, Fergie's on The Masked Singer. And we don't know that yet, but it's Fergie. Fergie is
I thought
Medusa.
she was the host.
No.
Am I confused?
Nicole Scherzinger.
But so
I knew that. I'm so cool. Oh my God.
So we were
Okay,
talking
never mind.
about Fergie, and then I'm talking to my coworker who's really into music, and I was like, well, you did know that she was like a child star in the 80s, and she was on a little show called Kids Inc., and then I had to bring up clips off my phone. I think I showed him Material Girl when she's dressed up as Material.
So your straight coworker was not familiar with Kids Incorporated?
He was not familiar with Kids Inc. I mean, he's like 30 years old, so why would he be?
Okay, yeah.
She does a devastating version of Time After Time after a fight with Renee, who is
With
also,
Renee.
I'm like, I loved kids. Like, I got the Disney Channel when my parents caught me like watching HBO at like 4 years old.
Sure.
They were like, nope. So that I was kind of bribed with that, and
Yeah.
I literally like lived for Kids Incorporated.
I got the tail end.
Stacey and Renee, man, they
I got the
were a
tail
good
end of
combo.
Kids
Inc.
Mm-hmm.
Wild Orchid.
I was gonna
Wild
say
Orchid.
pre-Wild Orchid, the two of them together.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Love. We can't forget.
Oh
Love.
no, yeah, Love just like hamming it up. We also got a girl. Her name is April Lerman. She was on the first season of Charles in Charge before they switched families. Now, see, that's some like early deep cut inside baseball shit because I used to watch Charles in Charge, and we all remember Nicole Eggert. And
Absolutely.
the blonde kid family, right? But the very first season, it was a different family. In the same house and all that. And the girl who was on the first season, who was the older sister, she's the girl with the she has two like long braids and she's a little older.
She sings really well.
She sings really
She's got
well.
a great voice.
Yeah,
I know
it's that
exactly.
girl.
She's kind of like, I call them like Gabby Hoffman, Christy McNichol.
Yeah.
Even though it's not them.
Yeah, it's not-
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
Which one's Christy McNichol, and then that one's Gabby Hoffman in my head.
Is Christy McNichol the one with the short hair that's real mean?
That's real mean.
Yeah.
That like one that doesn't care that Annie's about to die. And
Yeah. She's the lesbian.
Yeah.
And then Selena Gomez is the singer. And,
Molly.
I don't know if she's
yeah.
Molly.
Yeah, Selena Gomez is Molly. Yeah, for sure. I love that. Oh my God.
I remember hearing Leah Remini talk about on RuPaul's podcast that she went and auditioned for this.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I mean, I would imagine that if you were a child actress at the time in New York and LA, of course you went in to meet with somebody about Annie.
And she's about Alyssa's age, so that
Yep.
would have made sense.
You know who might even be in it too? Miss Sarah Michelle. But she would be
sure.
maybe a little too young, but she would have been around that same.
Should have been about
scene as
Molly's
well.
age, yeah.
You know, Sarah Michelle would have been, and same with Brittany Murphy, I think too, because they were all on that New York, New Jersey child star or child audition commercial scene.
Right,
you know?
right. I often thought, I think for me, Miss Hannigan was fun, and I liked her songs and stuff, but for me, she gave me a little too much, like Madame Medusa from like The Rescuers.
Oh, but I was obsessed with Madame Medusa as a child.
and
Of course.
but I was so mad at Madame Medusa still at that. I think I'm just thinking back to my 5-year-old self and what was off-putting about it. And I am telling you, I am a Tim Curry stan, like love him.
This has to be
like
we
no
have to
other.
be getting up there with Tim Curry movies on the show.
Yeah.
I think this is like number 3 or 4.
But there was something about that pencil thin John Waters mustache and the crowing.
It's such a good creep.
No, and that's the thing. As a 5-year-old, I was just like, I don't know what all this is. I'm not here for it. I don't want it at all. And so
it's too funny. I love it.
Yeah.
I would say Bernadette Peters would have been my probably first introduction to like a gangster mole.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That kind of version. Of it with that. Yeah, it's funny those kind of. And I would say same thing. Like Ann Reinking would have been my first hope that like. Somewhere I'm a prince, the kind of Princess Diaries of it all, where someone's going to come and rescue me. Not that I didn't love my family, but I wanted to be
right. Yeah. You know what's so great about this movie too is that Ann Reinking's little storyline. She's
doing some pretty solid work.
She's
in this
doing
movie.
great work. You fall in love with her. You're just like, yes, you adopt me, secretary lady.
Yeah, right. Can you just adopt me and we'll just live here?
But she has her own side storyline in that, like, she's having a little love story with Daddy Warbucks.
Yeah.
Like, she's the secretary, Mr. Burns character, but, like, at the end, she's fully like, all right, let's get married, and like we're having a family now.
Yeah. Well, she's so pretty when she's arguing with him.
Oh my God,
she's so cute when she's arguing with him.
Yeah.
Certain things have not aged.
Okay, so that's kind
Yeah.
of the big discussion that I think for all of us, even though we watched this movie about a year ago, and I remember
when we hit play on the rental right now, it said, "Oh, you want to start from where you left off last time?" It remembered that we rented it already.
We didn't quite finish the movie, but I remember when we last revisited this movie that it had been a while, and I think that I'm going to file this movie under this movie is better in your mind remembering it as a kid as it is now revisiting it. Because now when I sit through it, I get a little impatient with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's that thing that it's got great songs, great musical numbers, great performances, but the movie itself
I think there's something with the story that it doesn't quite. There's a middle section that not a lot happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a muscular kind of retelling without a heart, I mean, not without a heart. There are definitely everyone's giving their all. I agree. It's you just kind of appreciate it physically.
Yeah.
In more ways than being taken away from it. And certainly for me, having watched it, this was my first time in about 15 years. And I don't even know that I recognized it as much then, the kind of be our guest of it all, the Downton Abbey of it all, the aspiration that to work for the rich is the greatest kind of, your proximity to the rich is this glow that kind of elevates you as well. And I'm not saying we've changed in that way, but I hope that that's perhaps a new something that we're examining. And not to say that there aren't people out there whose dream is to make someone feel like their guests, but I certainly think that coordinates with having an equitable share in ownership of said establishment that guests are at.
Or we're going to pick up this child from an orphanage, bring her to our mansion in New Jersey for a week, and then drop her back.
I mean, let's be honest. In the 30s, 40s, how much of that do you think happened? How many times do you think kids were brought by a publicist from an orphanage?
I was going to say it's good PR. Yeah.
It's the Depression.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is that meme that goes around of Shirley Temple saying, like, during those little kids' follies, they would lock the kids in the closet,
in the black box. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, speaking of the movie itself as like a watchable kind of piece of entertainment, I think we're going to focus on the movie because Scott and I have never seen a live production of this.
I mean, you have for yourself. I have.
You have. Okay.
I mean, my mom used to get us tickets to the Alberta Bear Theater in Billings, Montana. It was just anything that was traveling through the state, any traveling production. So we would usually get a lot of the big musicals that were just traveling through the country. I saw Annie when I was in junior high. I saw The Music Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just just random Broadway.
Let me bring this
traveling shows here and there.
Let me bring this up. I feel like enough time has passed that the movie has become such an entity into itself, and hasn't the stage production, kind of like with Grease, kind of been more conflated with, you know what I mean? Like you go see Grease now and they're throwing in shit from the movie that wasn't in the original stage. And I think, isn't it kind of the same with Annie, or moving songs around because people are just so married to what they see on their TVs. So now if we go see Annie,
they cut the big songs from the 1977 Broadway show just that people aren't that familiar with.
Because the thing is, there's
I don't know much about I've never seen the play either, or the musical, so sorry to
thought it was interesting that the songs.
I just know that Sarah Jessica Parker originated.
She was the second.
Literally
Annie.
the knowledge I have of Annie. The musical.
Well, the thing is, like, before the movie, the musical was such a huge hit. You know, we go and we get the trailers for this show and all that. We're watching a lot of the commercials and things, and all of the copy is like, the show you love, the show that took over America. And it's like,
meanwhile, it was just 1977.
Yeah,
it wasn't that long.
They made this fairly quickly. Exactly. Right. I remember thinking the same thing of, like, you know, it took them 5 years to get this onto the screen. I'm sure it has a little bit to do with the John Huston, Clint Eastwood of it all. Once they hit a certain age, it's kind of like you just crash through every kind of thing, and it's just like, I'm going to make this. There's no indecision either way.
But I remember the original Annie before Sarah Jessica Parker, or Andrea McArdle, kind of became a little bit of an America's sweetheart at the time. Like, I remember seeing her like on Sesame Street as a teenager.
Did she ever translate to movies?
No, not really. I remember seeing her on Sesame Street as a teenager. Not her as a teenager, and I'm a little kid, and I'm just like, who is this girl? Like, I don't care about. And my mom was like, that's Annie. And I'm like, shut up, that's not Annie. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, it's the real Annie. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like 4, you know. And so, the show itself was so huge. Then it becomes this movie. But the movie, and I don't know if this could happen today if they translate a movie from the stage to a film, and it's so different. Like, they added so many songs, they took out many songs.
The songs that they added were really interesting because they're huge songs in the movie that you remember it. Dumb Dog, Sandy, Let's Go to the Movies, and We Got Annie were all added to this movie. Mm-hmm. Which I would imagine that's probably just now in the stage show.
Yeah, Sandy has to be in the stage show. Yeah.
Sandy, I mean, was great. I mean, it's interesting to think of the Let's Go to the Movies of it all, of like, this is when the start of cable TV. So it's like, was this a little bit of like, there's a you know, like, not that Hollywood doesn't always love to kind of immortalize itself, but like, there's a real sense of the glamorous golden age of Hollywood.
Are you talking about the full 15-minute clip of the black and white movie that's in the middle?
Of the Garbo, exactly, and the Rockettes special opening it and everything.
We're sitting here going, bitch, they are showing this whole ass ending of this movie.
Was this a thing that just like the Rockettes would just open up random
Radio City Music Hall, man?
Random like matinee screenings? I don't know.
Yeah.
I bet, like, for a small time, perhaps during the Depression, or perhaps, you know, I can't imagine that was for beyond. I
was a very cool kid, so I read this little independent book that you may not have heard of. It's called Catcher in the Rye, and and that's in the 50s. And he talks about going to Radio City Music Hall just to see the dancing girls before the movie. Okay. And so this is the 30s, and and it's like, I think it was a thing. I think, and you know, when we go to the El Cap here in LA, and like it's a big Disney or a big Marvel premiere or whatever, they'll have like a little do before the movie starts,
some little show.
Yeah, and so I think that was kind of a thing. It's like you go, you see the little dancing girls, and then the movie starts.
I love it. I love the Nicole Kidman.
It's an evening out.
Exactly.
But that's when you remember, like, oh fuck, John Huston.
John Huston is such an interesting choice for this movie.
He, you see it in the, like, what's it supposed to be? The Lower East Side,
right? Yeah,
the lot.
That back lot at the beginning. I mean, it's beautiful. It is like it's immersive. It's everything you want.
I think it's the Warner lot.
The Warner Lot, sure.
The Warner Lot,
yeah.
exactly. And don't, I'm going to say something that's probably, it sounds awful, and I don't mean it awful, but I don't love the sound of children singing. It truly,
no, I get it.
Like, I had to shut off Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio because it was like nails in a chalkboard. The sing, I just hate. I hate the sound of children singing.
Sure,
it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. But this one, perhaps it's because it hit me at that age. But it's just like the children singing scenes. Exactly, I identified with them as a kid, and they didn't annoy me even recently.
Okay.
I don't know if that's him, if that's the music, if that's the performers.
Well, because even the Hard Knock Life, which is a great song, it's so fun, it's such a bop, but those girls are screaming.
Yeah.
They're yelling.
They're yelling, and the Broadway singing of it all, the SNL kind of like Vanessa Bayer of it all.
Oh yeah, Eileen
I'm
Queen.
not a huge musical person because of that. There's an earnestness to them.
Yeah.
I much prefer. I'm like of the night. I like the Christina Ricci, the Juliette Lewis, the I hate acting, I don't want to be in this, and there's something so effortful of the Ann Reinkings and the Anne Hathaways and but that's not to say that theirs isn't incredible. But, I do come at this exactly. Like, I was surprised how much I still like this, considering.
You mentioned that, God bless Aileen Quinn. She didn't really go on to do anything, but that child acting kind of kills me. And yeah, it's the Vanessa Bayer SNL sketch of the child actor.
Yeah,
they're just aiming for the seats in the back.
Yeah. They're giving major theater kid energy. But okay, so let's talk about Eileen Quinn as Annie. Little Orphan Annie it started off as a comic strip, like literally comic strip, like the funny pages. And we know the look, the white eyes with no pupils, the orange afro, for lack of a better term, and the red and white little dress. Mm-hmm. And when they do give us the red and white dress, it's like, oh my god, there it is, that's the look. Those early scenes when she's in the orphanage and the hair is
out of control. Mm-hmm.
It's because how do you make that hair like in the real world?
I have to say, I thought truthfully it was done from like a utilitarian perspective of so they could confuse her with the stunt. Like it felt like they just took the wig off the stunt double and just kind of traded it back and forth.
We have her dance double.
Yeah. Yep. The two little pigtails in the back. It's like, why? What is going on? When you see Google Sarah Jessica Parker Annie. It's just a little bob.
Yeah.
It's just a little bob. They're not going for anything. She doesn't have a little crazy. Afro? No.
What?
She's a little bob, and it's like auburn.
Okay.
It's not even red. It's just her. I think it's her hair. Yeah. So they didn't care. They were not like going for realism. But this one, they're giving her this like halo of orange curls.
Yeah. It looks like Sandy took a few swipes at it. The John Huston trying, I guess, nitty gritty, like the Hollywood nitty gritty.
Yeah, it is
this poor girl.
But I did read that it's a wig. At least it's not like they didn't dye her hair or cut it into that. So that's good. But yeah, so the look is crazy, but at least they're trying to go for like, I don't know. Does this count as a comic book movie? Or they're like, okay, Superman did one thing and now we're going to try and match?
Sure. And I would imagine that's what John Huston's angle was, is that, sure, this Broadway show is really popular, but I want to make a movie that's a little more like the comic too.
Because I think the whole like Punjab in the ass, but I don't know that they're in the show, but they are from the comic strip. So it's like he was trying to, maybe he was trying to bring in more like we grew up on this, in the Depression, or whatever, like
Leapin Lizards.
Leapin. I feel like why do I have a memory of the comic in terms of like taking silly putty and like copying the comic? But it wouldn't have been on when we were kids. Was it still
maybe it was
in the funnies? I guess when we were kids
in the early '80s. Maybe do they have reruns of those? I don't know.
Yeah, that might have been. I'm like, I have some sort of comic memory of it, but that's funny. Is it a comic movie?
Yeah.
Is it a musical movie? It's like, I know, something to argue.
Stop, you're both right. Yeah.
I thought, they got her freckle face kind of, pluckiness.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, kind of certainly conveys,
Yeah. Yeah, so okay, Eileen Quinn, she's doing the most. But I mean, if we're really going to talk about like characters doing the most, the kids are crazy, but I mean, we haven't even talked about Albert Finney.
Yeah, I mean, Albert Finney, I read, is doing a John Huston impression in his voice, like that booming.
I can hear it.
That booming voice.
I can hear it.
I would love to see footage of John Huston. I don't know how old John Huston was when he directed this movie, but him directing all of these little girls.
I mean, I was picturing who had to hold his cigarette and who was, you know what I mean?
Smoking a cigar and blowing it in their faces.
Absolutely, like bright lights on them as it's like 5 a.m. and they're on their 900 amplie or whatever.
He has the big megaphone in his hand.
His job. Totally. I mean, John Huston was an old man in Chinatown. Mm-hmm. And that was.
This was one of. I think Prizzi's Honors was his last, but I mean, this is literally like this would have been, like his second or third to last movie.
Yeah. Okay, so Albert Finney is cast as Daddy Warbucks.
I was reading that Jack was almost Daddy Warbucks, and then he left.
There you go, John Huston. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. But this is one of those things that this is an adaptation of a stage production, but again, there's the comic book or the comic strip and all of that. And I think Albert Finney probably just came in and was just like, I'm just blank slate.
Yeah.
This is my interpretation of this like oligarch kind of
I know.
You know what I mean? But it's like a Depression era. I'm reading my ticker tape. It's very Mr. Burns, just like
they mention billionaire, and imagine what a billionaire looked like in the 30s.
I mean, I'm sure he probably based it exactly on like whoever would have been that. They have that thing of when he's got one of them. I think it's Ann Reinking. I forgot her name in the movie terribly. That's saying. He's asking about all the big guys. Or did this person call? Did this? It's like Carnegie, Rockefeller.
Yeah.
So he probably based it on
one of
some of them as well, and their kind of oratory and that heated personality, less so than from certainly a musical theater approach,
right?
Any kind of way.
These Titanic survivors that he's like on the phone with. But okay, so. Very rarely is he just speaking at a normal register.
Yeah.
Right. But when he is, he's giving John Huston because John Huston has a very memorable voice. He's Gandalf.
Yeah, he's Gandalf from the Hobbit.
Animated
Gandalf
movie.
Gandalf
means me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fucking son of a bitch villain in Chinatown. So he's got a very memorable delivery. And I can see it. But then when Albert Finney is on the phone with John Jacob Astor and Rockefeller and all he is just at the top of his lungs screaming, and it's comical. It's insane. It's ridiculous. But I mean, hey, he's doing the most. And what we notice, we're just like, thank God Albert Finney came in and was just like, just shave it.
Yeah.
Just shave it.
He's not wearing a bald cap.
I'm not putting on a bald cap every day. Just cut it off.
Amen. Agreed. Agreed. I always liked him in it. I never, the other thing that's funny to think about this is like, you think of kind of for every like, what is it? Rock of Ages and like just huge kind of, or even like the Chris Columbus Rent, or like when we're just like, so, the cynical adults in us all that are just like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And why was this a way? But then there's always like a 5-year-old somewhere that's like discovering musical theater and Broadway and through these kind of things. Which, exactly, because this is definitely not the best remake. But as a kid, something about the magic of his gruffness, and I actually believed his terrible chemistry with Ann Reinking.
Oh, my God.
I think he has more chemistry with Eleanor and FDR than he does with her.
Those Eleanor and FDRs are a little SNL.
Isn't that's Grandpa? That's Mr. Gilmore.
Yeah, it
Isn't
is. It absolutely is. Edward Herrmann.
Edward Herrmann. I mean, Edward Herrmann made a whole career out of playing historical figures. I think that I think that he played FDR numerous times. He is Hearst in The Cat's Meow.
Yeah.
Yeah. He played these types a lot.
But it's funny because it's 1982, so he's a lot younger. He's probably in his 30s, and they have the like Party City silver hairspray, you know.
Totally. I was trying to think. I didn't recognize her name, but who played Eleanor?
Yeah, I forgot who showed it. But let me ask this. I may have been dipping in and out of consciousness at this point last night because it was like 1 a.m. But was he even in a wheelchair?
No, he was.
Well,
no. Was he?
I don't remember.
He's introduced in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay. But I think he stands up at some point.
He stands up to sing when they all sing The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow.
Yeah, I think he stands up.
Is it like a crusty thing when he's playing FDR?
He just forgot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't let a little pesky thing, you know.
It was a mild case of polio.
Exactly. Keep you from being optimistic and singing about the sun coming out tomorrow.
Especially in like this, you know, it's the 30s, it's gray, it's black and white, and you know what? Fuck yeah, we're going to get out of this depression.
Eleanor Roosevelt is played by Lois DeBanzi.
Okay.
I bet she was probably a Broadway yeoman actress, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, I want to talk about Tomorrow because this song is I mean, it's iconic, obviously. Even if you've never seen Annie, you know Tomorrow.
I have a memory of it being a little showcased better in the movie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's kind of throwaway in that scene.
Yeah.
Purposely, they said he thought he was cheesy in Houston. I don't 100% disagree. I mean, my favorite songs were always as you said, the orphanage songs.
Yeah.
All the orphans.
Hard Knock
Sandy,
Life.
Hard Knock Life. You know,
Dumb
even
Dog.
Betcha There. Great.
Oh,
Betcha There.
yeah.
Like, I kind of like that
one.
as the callback song, too. It just is, again, it like, and you know, has different opinions, but it takes it away from the schmaltzy Broadway that often it doesn't ring true to me. I respect the art form of it, but it just, you know.
But if Tomorrow is like true, I mean, if history tells us that Tomorrow is like the let it go of this production. Mm-hmm. First of all, they're blowing their wad playing it over the opening credits.
Sure.
So I think that to me is John Huston saying, fuck that song. Who cares?
Yeah. Yep.
We're not going to build up to it.
Let's just get it out of the way.
Just get it out of the way. Then they play it in the middle of the movie with freaking FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt on backing vocals. And it's like a weird rendition. So you're like, okay. So it doesn't have this build-up or this like crescendo of the song. And then we do get the big closing number of it, which is good. And I will never forget the fireworks show at the end. I always was like,
oh, that's great. Yeah. I also think it's the type of song there are, you know, in every field, there are ways you impress kind of the general viewer, and there are ways you impress the person who's actively involved in your field.
Yeah.
You know, you write like David Baldacci, you write like what's Thomas Pynchon, you know, and I think that a lot of times the audience doesn't want the Thomas Pynchon of it all, or they do. For me, there are certain Broadway songs, and to me, that's Let It Go, and you know, feel free to argue, disagree with me, where they're so muscular and there's so much about the vocal prowess it takes to do the song that the emotion of it perhaps isn't as effective as, you know, she's been in the press. Say like a Stay by Rihanna, that isn't a very vocally hard song to sing. Mm-hmm. And so that to me is why I tend to gravitate. I don't love Let It Go. I don't love And I Am Telling You. I don't love those big, which is I know it's terrible, but those big muscular songs because I lose the emotion by just seeing the technical prowess it takes for the singer to sing it. And I think The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow for a child singer is a version of that.
Yeah,
you know?
sure. Yeah. So it is interesting seeing how kind of the structure of it and the filmmakers kind of like molded this movie to be what they wanted it to be. But because Tomorrow, even at the time, with like cast recordings and all that, probably was a bigger hit. I doubt it was on the radio or anything, but it's interesting that they chose to kind of to give it that place in the movie. But that kind of means that the movie doesn't really have like a big hook.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, does it? I don't know. I remember. I mean, as a kid, I was just like, "Fuck yeah, Hard Knock Life." That was the one that made me like fucking pumped, and it's right at the beginning. You're just like,
there's a lot of energy in it. It really gets you in the mood.
Yeah, little 5-year-old Pete was just like, yeah.
There's a lot of the structure of this, and this is where my lack of knowing a lot of musicals might be showing through. But I felt like there's a lot of structure in this musical that is familiar in some of the famous later Disney ones that we saw. The kind of little girls as Ursula, orphan souls. What's it? I think you're gonna like it here, and is the Be Our Guest of it all. And so like. There was a lot of that, exactly, that was interesting. But I think you're right. It's like by doing kind of towing the line between both, they didn't make their money back. I think they failed to please the Broadway fans, and they failed to please the cinematic fans.
I think that it made decent money, but I think that it was just a really expensive production.
Exactly. I think Clint Eastwood's Jersey Boys is another example of that. It's like,
God, I completely forgot about Clint Eastwood's Jersey Boys. That's a movie that's pretty much been like erased from pop culture.
Yeah, and it's another one of like this kind of macho, muscular director trying to exert their style on an art form that they perhaps don't fully understand or know as well.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Okay, so now I want to talk about. We talked a little bit about Tim Curry and.
Do we want to talk a little bit more about
Peters.
Carol Burnett?
But yeah, let's get into Carol Burnett, Tim Curry, and Bernadette Peters.
That was interesting. That I think this was almost Bette, which I could totally see Bette Midler as a really good Miss Hannigan.
100%, and it's so funny you say that because that never even crossed my mind. And now that you say that, I feel like I've known that forever.
Right.
You're right.
Makes total sense.
She must have been offered it.
She would have been so young, though. Like I don't know what the age difference is between Carol Burnett and Bette Midler.
I buy an '80s, but
I buy
Bette
it.
Midler running an orphanage.
I buy it and I love it, but I think I like Carol Burnett's age in the movie because she's just like that. She's man hungry. I mean, she's going after Mr. Bundles.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry.
She's fucking Mr. Bundles.
She just needs a man to hold her. Like Ramona. I mean, I loved it. Like, there's just something so. I mean, it's like the older you get, the more you are Team Hannigan.
Yeah.
I mean, the poor thing with these kids just stomping on her
stuck
feet.
in this orphanage with all these kids.
Her dreams getting shit on, and her brother taking advantage of her. I just feel so sorry for her, and she can't even get a moment of quiet to have her martini.
Just sitting there with her big paddle, making the bathtub gin.
I used to love that part as a kid. Partly just because, just alcohol in movies, I always just found so fascinating.
Yeah,
especially when she's introduced holding that giant gin bottle. There's something so ASMR about her scene that I think I connected to in the 80s of like the gin, just and also like clanking and the clanking on the glass. Yeah, it's just so. And she just, exactly. She's bawdy, but that's the Carol Burnett of it all. She's able to be bawdy without kicking it completely into caricature.
Right. She throws some hiccups in there, and it's fine. It's still good.
I guess on NPR, she did an interview with Terry Gross, and she talked about how she got her chin done somewhere in production, and when they did pickup shots later, her chin looks different, so if you're looking really close, you can clock the work that she's had done.
I didn't notice.
I could notice it last night.
Yeah, but it was
wow.
But yeah, that comes straight from her, though.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in the musical, and I didn't know this either, that she doesn't have any redemption. She goes to jail.
Right.
She doesn't really try to stop the kidnapping. And I like that they did that. I wonder whose idea, if that was the writer, if Carol Burnett had any say in that,
I would say maybe Carol Burnett had a little bit of say
when she sees that Rooster is clearly going to murder this child.
He's going to throw her off a bridge. Yeah.
She's not a terrible person. She just wants a little quiet and to make these kids, work for her. She's helping them help her.
Yeah.
And, so I love it. And she gets her kind of scene at the end. She gets to enjoy the fireworks, too.
Oh, yeah, that's true. She's there. Yeah. And, it's effective when he's chasing after her after she's gone up the bridge and she screams at him. You're just like, oh, shit. All right.
Totally. Yeah. It's an endearing portrayal. I haven't seen Cameron Diaz's take on this. We're just going cinematic.
Cameron Diaz's last
bad teacher.
major Cameron Diaz's last major Hollywood role. I mean, I know that she's making a Netflix movie with Jamie Foxx right now. But yeah, the last time that we saw Cam on screen was Miss Hannigan 2014. We did not see it.
No,
so
we didn't see it.
And that's what's interesting, that Annie is just one of those properties that every generation just sort of has an Annie. There's the Broadway show, there's the 82 movie, the 99 movie with Rob Marshall. I know is really beloved with Broadway fans because I know that it's the most like the show.
And this is the
that's the Rob Marshall one with Kathy Bates,
and Kristen Chenoweth.
Yeah,
got it.
And
I mean, one would argue that Matilda kind of took Roald Dahl and made it for the new generation, down to like the crazy choreography by the girls. And
I was going to say,
I mean, there's a lot of influence here.
I was going to say, when we got those first trailers of the Netflix Matilda and those girls are just like stomping down the hall, I was just like, this is giving me Annie.
We didn't watch it. Is
vibes.
It good?
I watched the first few minutes, and I was actually like, talk about surprise
Children
performance of the year. That was Andrea Riseborough's surprise performance playing the mom. But it's just a little manic for me.
Oh, is
again.
she? Yeah. Is she Miss Honey, or
plays
she
the mom, the Rhea Perlman character?
Oh, okay,
so it's really bawdy and over the top, and I love
cute.
the Brits are really good at that too. They can be Broadway, without and then go back and be serious the way we have a lot of our Broadway actors don't always translate as well.
Right.
The same with our stage or our theatrical actors, but the Brits really seem to do both well.
I've always wondered why Bernadette Peters never had a bigger movie career, because she was in stuff in the 80s. Stuff here and there in the 90s.
She had a boom in the 80s because she was such a big Broadway star, and they're like, let's bring her over. She's beautiful. She's petite.
Did like heart bleeps like derail her career?
I don't know. I think she just picked weird shit. Mm-hmm. She's in weird movies.
I also think, I think it has to do, who knows? I mean, didn't she in the 80s like originate a lot of Sondheim roles and stuff?
Sure.
I think it probably just takes like so long, the rehearsals, the practice, the all that it's, but the joke is they make more for an episode of Law and Order than they do for like the entire Tony
Sure.
show.
Yeah.
I love her. I mean, last thing I would have said she was in, I thought she was fun on Mozart in the Jungle.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
heard
she's
good things
great.
about that.
She's great in the magical world of Disney Cinderella as the evil stepmother. So good in that role.
Yep, absolutely. And the jerk. I mean, I always remember her from the jerk too, which would have been right around this.
And she was married or dating Steve Martin, right?
I don't think they were married, but they were a couple for a long time.
And I know that Steve Martin was in talks for Rooster, and I think when he found out that Bernadette was attached to it, I think that he kind of declined.
Got it.
They just split up, probably.
I think so, yeah.
I feel like she, it's Bernadette Peters. She has this reputation. She has this voice, all that stuff. And then there's songs like Easy Street, and you're like, I think she's almost underused in this movie.
100%. I don't think she was yet Bernadette Peters, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think she was more like Broadway ingenue. It's like Kristen Chenoweth, Charlie Brown, not Wicked yet. You know what I mean?
Well, let me tell you this. Quads in Palm Springs that we've talked about on the show. Mm-hmm. It's a Broadway video bar, and everybody sings along when they show the clips. They play Easy Street from the Rob Marshall version.
The 99 one. Yep.
A lot. And Kristen Chenoweth is heavily featured in that version.
I'm sure.
They booked that one for a reason.
Yes.
Yep.
And in this movie, it's funny. Carol Burnett gets slammed into the walls and, falling out over the window sill and all of these things. It's a funny performance, but it's definitely Tim Curry heavy.
Yeah, it's much more focused too. I feel like on the vaudeville movement of it than on the exactly. It's funny. It's like almost exactly like, was John Huston kind of like, I want to make this movie as his remembering his kind of the highlight or his own childhood. Not that he was a child at that time, but he would have, the vaudeville probably would have been.
I think that some of the Easy Street stuff was reshoots too. I think that they had originally filmed a different take on Easy Street, and it may have been out on the back lot more.
And they brought it back into the...
And they brought it back
You're
into,
right.
into the orphanage.
And it was $2 million or something.
Yeah,
and then
there was a lot of extras.
You're right.
I think I think Easy Street's the one where you can see Carol Burnett's work that she's had done on her channel.
Oh, okay. That's where she says like it's most visible. Again, I love that backlot. It would have been nice to see it featured a little bit more, but we get a good bit of it at the beginning with the dog
opening.
catcher and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So it's used. But yeah, I remember as a kid, Easy Street. I feel like I was just born. Again, I'm 5, so
it's also not the catchiest song.
Yeah. It's a very Broadway kind of
probably
song,
a hard song to sing too.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I want Annie swimming in the indoor pool,
Totally. I mean, wasn't it? It's like when you start to think back to, you're like, was this my first like introduction to like rich?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Luxury,
Sugar baby, sugar baby, and sugar daddies. Yeah,
this is definitely
and it might well have been.
Well, because
it's just like help who can't wait to just serve me.
Because this isn't just a mansion, Mama. This is Great Gatsby.
Oh yeah, these are those giant mansions in New Jersey.
This is an estate. This is.
It always reminds me of the mansion from The Witches of Eastwick, but I think that The Witches of Eastwick is just down the road. I think that house is in the neighborhood in New Jersey.
Yeah. This shit is like Mall of America. Like there's like a Westfield sign in front of this house. Yeah. Like it's so big.
There's like a Things Remembered.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that house.
A tinderbox in there. Yeah. The indoor pool, insane. But there's a couple of like super kooky. Like we were talking about like this is some like airplane style.
Oh yeah, when the bomb gets thrown in Daddy Warbucks' office, that is straight up a Jerry Zucker joke.
And it's like a Tom and Jerry bomb. Like the black ball with the big white. Like,
is that what they looked like? Where did someone get that? Like,
when did that become?
Where did a big mallet ever come from?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always like, there's certain things I'm like, were these impractical use? And then they were like exaggerated.
Mommy, what's the Bolsheviks?
Yeah, who are the Bolsheviks? Yeah,
that's too funny.
Oh my god. So okay, I know that the portrayal of Punjab may or may not be appropriate in 2023.
May not age so well. Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you that my sister and I were very obsessed with him. And this actor, he is... I just had him. Okay. Jeffrey Holder. He passed away in 2014. He was a dancer. He was a big stage star. And... my older sister and I, when we were little, and Annie came out, and we were obsessed with Punjab and his whole like enchanting the like airplane and his little dance is very like it's a small world. He did 7-Up commercials. He became the face of 7-Up, right after Annie, and he has a very deep, booming voice.
Fresh, clean taste, no aftertaste, wet, wild, all that. Marvelous, absolutely marvelous. Just try making something like that out of a cola nut. Why, it's even prettier than a cola. Nuttier than a cola, actually.
And if you look up these 7-Up commercials, they're all on YouTube. And 7-Up, their ad campaign at the time in the early 80s was they were the Uncola because there's the Uncola and there's no caffeine and all that. And so his whole thing was like the Uncola in this like Punjab deep voice, and he would laugh, and he has a very distinctive laugh, and I think he does it a couple times. He's like, So my sister and I, every time the Punjab Jeffrey Holder Uncola 7-Up commercials would come on, we would like scream and laugh and be like the Uncola and just go around like quoting that, and we loved it. And this actor who is the Asp, who is just like he's like the character's Japanese, but he's doing like kung fu.
Yeah. Is he the driver?
I think he's a driver.
And then they like add in the music, that kind of Eastern.
Yeah.
I mean, the exoticism, for lack of a better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Really off the chart.
It's crazy, but I have to tell you that Roger Minami, who's playing the Asp, his body movements when he's doing these crazy kung fu things are like captivating. I was just like, what is he doing? How is he doing all that stuff? You know, and I think Annie says like, oh, I was just having like kung fu lessons with the Asp, and that's when she really actually kicks Albert Finney in the shin, like at one point. But yeah, there's just a couple of things that as a kid I was just very much like, oh my God, I love this. I'm here for it. And that's why certain things, you know, and again, a 5-year-old, adult scenes are not going to hold your attention.
Yeah.
But and you know, when you're that age too, you kind of like your awareness of like period movies.
Yeah.
And like this is supposed to be a different time frame.
I feel like you would only know the depression of when your grandparents might have talked about it.
Yeah.
Or like your even like your great grandma.
Yeah. Okay. This is when they made cookies with bacon fat.
Yeah.
And like
Exactly.
didn't throw it
I mean, in
away.
fairness, Punjab gets the Schwarzenegger moment. I mean, he gets to be the hero.
He has It's the big True Lies moment. And that helicopter from the 30s that does not. I don't think I'm getting in that.
That auto gyro or whatever the hell it is.
And it's a good plug for Buddhism as well, too, which was a good.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That whole like, oh my God, that ending sequence is out of control. But so we. Every time I watch this movie, the whole idea of like Annie's long lost parents and her broken locket and all of that. It's like
Classic orphan Annie like thing. You always remember the locket.
You always remember the broken locket. But okay, first of all, she gets chosen to do the week with Moneybags. What's his name?
Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah. Warbucks, Daddy Warbucks. She gets the week with Daddy Warbucks.
Love the scene where she's listening in on the conversation with Ann Reinking.
Oh, that is cute. And she's like 10-year-old redhead. She's like, I don't got any of that.
Yeah.
That's really great. Okay, so she wins the Joe Millionaire. Then she convinces him to actually adopt her. Then she's like, oh, you know what? Fuck all this. Fuck your house. Fuck your couch. I want to find my real parents and leave you and go live in abject poverty.
And I'm like, Annie, you kind of got a sweet deal going on.
I mean, I
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, throw the locket in the ocean.
Even if your parents are alive, do you really want to go back to them?
You know?
They're lost. But yes, I know. Exactly. It's because her heart is in the right place, and by proving that she loves the beast for him and not for his money.
Yeah.
She gets.
Yeah. All of this whole Cinderella, like, oh, well, you know, I interviewed, what did she say? She interviewed 800 people?
Yeah.
800 families.
Anne is so sad in that scene of just like, all these people that are lying to him.
Yeah. Well, also, I don't think she wants to give up Annie either. I think Anne is just like, what the hell?
I mean, that's also like, I know we have this idea of like, you know, everyone prior to like the 70s used to like all kind of sing together and love each other and all that. But one would argue that like going back to like pre-civilization, if you were to dangle a reward for something found, half the tribe would show up and say they found it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But Anna's just so sad in that scene of just like
none of them knew about the locket.
She just expects the best out of people, and she's just heartbroken that everybody is lying just to get the money.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she also like it was the type of woman who thinks that her billionaire man is going to marry.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway, rest in peace, Ann Reinking.
I know. Oh my God. Where does Rooster get the broken piece of the locket?
It's Miss Hannigan has it.
Oh, she just had it.
They died in the fire.
They died in a fire, and they dropped off kind of the rest of their belongings. She has these, I think, just random possessions of orphans in all of these boxes.
Okay. Okay.
And Miss Hannigan has been sitting on this forever.
Sure.
But character decision, and who knows? Will we ever know? Is this to protect the children?
Right,
Or is
right.
she doesn't care?
Yeah. Because, I mean, you would argue that, like, at that point, maybe you want to wait until they're adults to, like, divulge their reasonings for being given up for adoption.
I mean, if we're realistically looking at this, what does a child like that have truly to look have except the hope for something, you know? So really, she's the hero, Miss Hannigan.
Absolutely, Ms. Hannigan. It's funny because, again, we're little kids when we're introduced to this. It's the early 80s when this comes out. And so, to me, it's like, are orphanages still, like, is this what happens to you when your parents die? You go and live in this big brownstone.
You have to go. You have to go sleep with like the row of beds.
Yeah, and let me tell you this: the early 80s obsession with orphan children. Was it because of Annie?
What are the other 80s orphan children?
We had Punky Brewster.
Sure. Yeah.
We had Different Strokes, Webster. There was a whole show that was like called Rags to Riches, which was like a Annie fake ripoff musical, half-hour single camera show in I want to say 87. That was called Rags to Riches. That was about an orphanage. And I think at this point we had probably transitioned to calling them group homes and not orphanages.
Or the Boys and Girls Club, but that wasn't really.
No, that was just play after school.
I forget what Punky Brewster calls the place where she lived before.
She calls it the name of whatever it is. Yeah.
They had Boys Town too.
Right.
Do you remember that?
But that's all very.
My father was a teacher, and he actually taught at a Boys Town,
goodness.
in the 70s.
Wow.
Those still existed for a while.
Yeah. And Boys Town was religious, I think, or maybe it wasn't. But yeah. There was a strange fascination in pop culture with kids with no families and just kind of. I mean, Henry Warnemont wasn't rich by any means, so she was still kind of.
But I mean, your favorite show,
Different Strokes.
Different Strokes. I mean, that's also
that's a Daddy Warbucks.
Poor kids that get to be rich.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And Webster too, and that was also a thing about smaller statured African American boys being adopted by.
Do you think it had to do with too? And I don't want to reduce anything to it also had to do with a little bit the more openness of adoption in the 70s.
Sure,
because prior to that, wasn't it always
secret?
Basically, it was a secret, and this was our child, and you didn't even tell the kid, and you didn't do this and that, and so with a little bit of openness to. With openness comes ability to adopt children that don't look totally like you.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, nothing. Not that the 70s were a beacon of a lot of change, but perhaps it was a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Rags to Riches was Joseph Bologna, a wealthy, widowed businessman, adopts 5 daughters to live with him at his mansion. One of the daughters being Tisha Campbell. From Martin and from Little Shop of Horrors. Mm-hmm.
What was Silver Spoons? Was that the same thing too? Or was he not?
He was not adopted. That was his father, but I think he didn't know his father until he was 10 or 11. And then he went to go live with the dad, and the dad was rich. So it was
became a conservative nut.
Was it almost kind of like a Parent Trap sort of thing?
Yeah, maybe. But I think the mom just died.
Okay.
And he's just I'm going to go live with my dad.
I was thinking about that, when you're talking about the original Charles and Charlie. Remember what they would do to us with sitcoms in the 80s? Do you remember the Hogan family? And they killed Valerie Harper off.
Yeah.
You're laughing one minute with Jason Bateman, and then his mom's dead. I mean, it was scary what they would do.
And it's not like you were following the salary dispute.
No, as a kid, you're just what? Why is
Sandy Duncan's there next day, and I'm okay.
Yeah. Why? I don't know. Sitcoms kind of warped my mind as to what my home life should or should not be like.
Well, also as you get to older, there are certain things you start to realize, as you get older, that to me taints certain things. And one is the idea that, like, and obviously I still love Buffy even as much as it's been tainted by a lot of things, but there's this idea that, like, a person who's lived for hundreds of years would want to spend any time with high school
with
kids.
teenagers. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Instantly is like, I don't even as a 40-year-old.
Like, why is Angel Angel picking up this blonde high schooler at the Bronze? Like, why does he care?
Exactly. Like, get me the hell away from high school kids. And then the other one being that, like, if someone died in your family, like, your aunt's going to move in and, like, and take care of you. Or, like, the Full House of it all, that, like, your dad and your uncle are going to be, like, best friends and move. Like, you couldn't have a gun to my head for me to move in with, like, I love my brother-in-law. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right?
Like, my friends' wives. Like, no, literally murder me.
And just raise their kids. Okay. Yeah. But
like in the 80s, that was just like normal. Oh, Aunt Sandy's moving in to raise us now.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe Annie did just have this kind of like overarching kind of
you just started to see it all in television.
Yeah, an influence on everything. I think definitely it that's where you get something like a Punky Brewster.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
That show Rags to Riches is like, well, you know what I did read too? When you're reading the plot synopsis on Wikipedia about this movie, it says that Daddy Warbucks and Grace adopt Molly. But you don't see that
no
in there too. Yeah.
I mean,
because you see the other orphans. You see the other orphans in like nice Sunday best.
Did the other orphans I mean, I guess that they just come over and visit.
But it also says that a family adopted like 4 of them.
Okay.
Together to be sisters, and that Daddy Warbucks and Grace adopted Molly to be Annie's sister. But you just see them dressed in fancy clothes. You don't see like them with like a mom and a dad and here's Molly to run over and join the family as they're all hugging at the very end. These are just little things that they could have thrown in there, but it's in the plot synopsis on Wikipedia. So I don't know, is that in the press packet somewhere?
Or he filmed it in part of the like Money the Wasted scenes that were often.
Yeah. But
I think there's definitely that kind of I don't know, archetypal Heidi, Shirley Temple like the little girl that's just so plucky that she just melts the kind of grumpy old people's hearts.
Right.
That will always what Miracle on 34th Street. There's something about that will always be kind of Megan now, like we'll always have
Megan.
The young girl who melts our heart,
No, absolutely. It is definitely like an archetype in like entertainment and cinema and television and books and all of that. I mean, even like Pippi Longstocking kind of a thing.
Love me some Pippi Longstocking. Oh my gosh, the 80s Pippi Longstocking.
I grew up on the...
Remember Scrubbing Day? It's my favorite
I
thing.
grew up on the 80s Pippi Longstocking, and Pete, meanwhile, is like, oh no, that's Garbage Mama.
That's Garbage Mama, and I'm here to tell you why.
Why?
Let me tell you why. In the late 70s and early 80s in Los Angeles, our local KTLA, Channel 5, which is now the CW affiliate. They were always the WB, and now they're the CW. But before that, it was KTLA, local channel, and it's a historic channel. It's a historic channel, and not only in California. They were the first live newscopter was out of KTLA. They go back very far.
Following the car chases.
I watch the morning news when I work from home 2 days a week, every day. KTLA on the weekends would show the Family Film Festival, and the Family Film Festival was hosted by this guy. And he had white hair, and he was very handsome. He looked like Phil Donahue. And he would introduce, there would be Popeye cartoons, and then there would be a movie. And they would very often show the early 70s Swedish Pippi Longstocking with the English overdub.
The dubbed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
terribly
it was
dubbed.
Terribly dubbed. They didn't match the words at all, but we didn't care. And because it was so charming. This little girl, Inger Nilsson,
picking up horses.
Who is
I
Pippi
remember her.
Longstocking.
I rented them from the library.
Oh
Pippi
my
in the
God.
South Seas
Pippi
and
in the
Pippi
South-
in the.
yeah.
I agree. Those were wonderful. Those and the opening song I remember was great too.
I am
You're right, but
Longstocking. Yeah. Oh my
good.
God.
I am Pippi Longstocking.
Yes.
I do remember.
Yeah.
that.
So to me, that was always Pippi. The little Annika had the baby doll bangs. And
Louise
like
Brooks.
The
It's like
Louise
the-
Brooks and the Bob. Yeah. And Tommy was a little blonde boy because they were in like, you know, the Netherlands or whatever. And Tommy and Annika, that was the first time I heard the name Annika before. And, you know, what's the Mr. Nelson, the horse with like black paint spots on him. Yeah. So then when the 80s or
the
90s,
New Adventures
It
of
was like
Pippi
87.
Longstocking.
Yeah.
Like 87 or 88.
She's giving me Robin Lively. She's giving me Teen Witch. She's giving me too old. Ingrid Nilsson
She I think, in that crew with them too. I think she's like. She popped up again. You're right. It's about Eileen Brennan, though. Is that
Eileen Brennan's so funny in it.
That's what I loved about it.
Yeah,
is Eileen
same.
Brennan.
No, you're right. But Pippi was great. But yeah, I think that you're right. This character it's an archetypal character, and so I do think that it did have a huge influence on the 80s and sitcoms and trickling down and all of that. But it does go back a lot further than even the movie and the stage show. It's a character type that's been
also
around.
like the cute little white girl that surrounds herself by all of these ethnic people that are sort of teaching her wisdom too.
I mean, sadly, look at the Charlie or what's the Shirley Temple tap dancing.
Oh yeah.
You know,
yeah.
On the positive side, I'll say it speaks. But let's say it speaks to an innocence that we see that like, and certainly like a unjaded optimism that I certainly have to muster sometimes.
I think it's interesting when looking that you remember this movie and you're like, it's Annie, it's great. But when you look up the reception of this movie was not liked at the time. It was very, I think critics just sort of dismissed it of just being a pretty like mediocre movie. I mean, Pauline Kael, I love a good Pauline Kael burn.
Shade.
She says that the story cries out for a cockeyed fairy tale tone, but instead has the feeling of a manufactured romp. Every sequence seems to be trying too hard to be upbeat and irresistible, but it's all ungainly. And that was just kind of the consensus of the critical reception of this movie.
I don't disagree, but I do think there's cynicism. I mean, there's an air of cynicism that perhaps as children we didn't.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and do you think? I mean, obviously, you had to have thought this, but is John Huston sitting there thinking, "I'm making a children's movie"? Like, this is for the kids. This is for the kiddos. Does he give a shit? But I mean, obviously, it's a kids' movie. I mean,
I think at that age, that's like a rumination on like age, ego, on like, you know what I mean? Like, on what would he be thinking? Like a guy who's kind of accomplished everything at that point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I personally would think it has to do with him trying to connect with the early chapter of his life as he's now closing one, and with the movie's style that would have been popular to kind of, during his formative years, which are like these.
And he would have grown up on Little Orphan Annie, the comic strip, too. So it would have been something from his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching A Christmas Story and Ralphie being very obsessed with his Little Orphan Annie Dakota ring and all of that and the Bi-Ovaltine.
I remember hearing
this scene.
I remember hearing stories from my grandparents of listening to the Annie radio show.
That was my asking my parents, what's Little Orphan Annie? What is it? What are they talking about? And just kind of explaining to me the idea of radio shows. And before television, there was, radio, and it was showed like sitcoms or whatever. And it would be a half hour or 20 minutes. And
Annie foiling diamond heist. I don't know. Whatever they would, whatever adventures Annie would get on would be getting into.
Yeah, just what shenanigans is Little Orphan Annie?
I would assume that
it's funny there was never like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah,
was there? Was there that we don't remember?
I don't know. I don't think there was, because this is again at a time when Saturday morning cartoons
Punky
are huge. Punky got one. Yeah, Alf got one.
Yeah, they all did.
Yeah, and it's a very kind of a Richie Rich kind of a thing that I could definitely see.
I think a big part of the radio show is her trying to find her parents, too.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, and then we read all into it, and maybe like his grandkids liked it, and so I was like, "Yeah, let's just do it." You know what I mean? Like, who knows?
Yeah. Because it's one of those things that's like, everybody has to kind of say, like, with kids movies, there has to be something in it for the adults, and the whole like Pixar thing of just like, oh well, adults can watch it too, and we can laugh at Shrek while the kids are doing whatever. But I guess, I don't know, this is at a time when kids movies didn't really have that angle. It's like, this is a kids movie, the kids like it, the adults are snoring through it. And so the kids did like it. The kids took to, I mean, obviously we all have these fond memories of the songs and everything. So maybe the adult critics are just like, this is not the best film of the year, but it's,
which when I revisit this movie, absolutely.
Yeah,
I totally get that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was this, like, again, there's Broadway musicals, there's Cats, and there's Cabaret. Like,
Sure.
they're both successful, but some were critically, like, was Annie ever like I don't know.
Annie was
Yeah,
never really
true.
high art.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did like the Times, theater critic love when it premiered? I don't know, and one would argue, there is a certain aspect of like what's in it for adults is uncomfortable. It's jealousy that children have, the children still have. There's an opportunity, which we all have, but they're a lot wider when you're a child.
Yeah.
That you can be in a dark, dark place and it can change on the drop of a dime. And that can happen as an adult, but that also, we know as we get older that the odds are a lot harder.
Yeah.
So, there's perhaps that of like, it is that it does inspire some cynicism, or it touches the cynical side of people,
Yeah, crazy. But, for better or for worse, it's just become this kind of pop cultural touchstone that we all just...
Every few years, there's always an Annie revival, either on the West End or on Broadway.
Yeah.
Sadie Sink from Stranger Things, I think her big break was Annie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I just read that.
Wasn't there after the Rob Marshall movie, wasn't there an Annie 2? Like,
there was
Annie on the Move?
There was like a
Disney Channel, like a direct to TV.
There was like a direct to TV movie.
I think there's an Annie 2, like Annie Goes to Paris or something.
But I remember around probably the year 2000, there was a big Annie revival on Broadway, because I remember the actress going on Rosie.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We need now like a steampunk Annie for like the new generation, steampunk animated DC Annie.
Oh my God. Annie has like an Iron Man suit or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it has become part of like pop
and
culture.
kind of seeped its way into hip hop music.
Well, who could forget the Jay-Z?
Yeah.
I remember first hearing this song in the 90s and just being like, well, how do you like that? How do you like that? Sampling Hard Knock Life for a rap song.
I love it. And clearly this connected with all races as children. And a lot of people felt, because I remember Jay-Z talking about it at the time, like that exactly. Like there was a certain aspect of Annie feeling excluded that people connected to, of Annie being forgotten. I think that a lot of kids and specifically, like black, brown, everybody connected to,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's just the aspirational, like, like you said, like you love your family and you love your parents and all that, but every now and then you're just like, I mean, shit, would I kick these people would drop them like a bad habit to go live in
this mansion,
or even Mr. Drummond's like upper Central Park West, like just a little. It's an apartment, Mr. Drummond's house, but that shit is like pretty.
Yeah, and like why is it this for me, and why does Richie Rich get this?
Yeah,
like, which is a kid you don't really like. You can't process that. You know what I mean? Like, why am I like in the burbs in Jersey, which is a great place to be? But, like,
absolutely.
At that age, it felt so boring. And like Madeline is like in a beautiful, orphanage, but in Paris. Like you're not thinking logically because everything's about being unique, and you just feel like you're just like a dime a dozen.
I was always very fascinated of kind of watching stuff like Sesame Street or any TV shows that were set in New York and what it would have been like to
urban
be
jungle.
a kid in this like urban environment, because it was just something so foreign to me.
Yeah. Everybody just has these kind of like fascination with something that's not familiar to you.
And I'm sure probably for you it was growing up in the country.
Oh, what? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the woods,
yeah,
like behind the school. What? No.
I have that now. No, I never had that either.
There's no woods around us. But
mine was New York and LA, and I would write letters you'd write it to like CAA because it was like Avenue of the Stars.
Yes,
I remembered I loved writing that on the letter to like Shannon Doherty or whoever. It was so stupid,
Fan letters, I love it.
Did you write a fan letter to Shannon Doherty as a kid?
Oh, 1,000,000%.
I love that. Did you get any answer back?
90210 and Saved by the Bell people.
Oh my God, I love that.
I wrote to the Buffy offices as a kid, and I got back a signed it was like a photocopied signed like print of the cast.
Oh,
but yeah,
cute.
I got something sent back though.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. I love that.
I never got anything.
I think I actually wrote to Allison Hannigan. Because I was the gay kid that was writing to Allison Hannigan.
To Willow. CAA probably had your letters went straight in the like pneumatic tube to like the
exactly
incinerator.
it became toilet paper for like the downstairs staff. I mean, like it's so terrible.
Like, oh, got another fan letter.
Yeah. I know. It was used for Tiffany Thiessen when she complained. Look at all these fan letters. Everybody wants to be you. Get to work.
Get back from your 20-minute lunch.
Exactly.
Know your worth, Tiffany. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what kids are fascinated by, something like Annie and all of these, orphan stories of just being swept away, and the Princess Diaries, kind of just
Anastasia.
Like, yeah,
episode from December.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. And the very idea that passively things will happen to you and change your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a very kind of child.
Every now and then, though, it's like for me, like I look at my dad, I look at my sister, I look at my some of my family. I'm just like, there's no goddamn way I'm adopted. There is no goddamn way that there is some prince out there that's just like, you're my son. I'm like, no, I'm this man's twin. I am this man's exact body double. I am here to like harvest my organs when he gets older because I am his clone. So some of us never had the opportunity to be like, but what if I'm secretly brought here from the circus? Because that was my experience, at least. But I could always dream that one day they would all perish in a fire, and an old white man would take me to.
What's it, The Little Princess, or what was that one? The one, oh my gosh, I can't remember, where she has that too. She's
isn't that the Scott?
I mean, I think A Little Princess is like that, but also The Secret Garden too. Her parents die in India, and she's sent to this like English estate. I used to love The Secret Garden as a kid.
That's great.
The 90s
it's
movie
magical.
is so good.
Yeah, it's magical.
That's Agnetha Holland, I think.
Yep. It is, yeah.
Agnieszka,
yeah.
And that and the Coron, A Little Princess were made
very,
very close together too.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that movie is set in an orphanage too.
See?
And here, I will say this, and this is, and this is where it gets so complicated in another conversation, but that movie definitely exoticized Hinduism, but made me go down a Rama and the Ramayana path so much that I ended up reading it and taking upper level Hindu classes in university because I just loved that story.
The Secret Garden?
Like that's where it gets, like complicated, but it was I remember that specifically from that movie as well. He did it so beautifully, the Rama and Sita story, Wow. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's just something about these iconic, movies that, like we said, they're cultural touchstones. They like bring about lots of different other
and this type of story that there can be just kind of every generation, like I mentioned before, can have an Annie.
Oh yeah.
Even though all three of us did not watch the 2014 Annie. I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that it's there.
Yeah, and listeners, if you're all about Jamie Foxx and is it Quvenzhané Wallis?
Yeah.
Let us know.
It's not a musical, right? I don't think it's a musical.
I think that there might be some songs in it.
Is it a hip opera? It's not a hip opera.
Sia do the music for it?
Oh, that's right. I think that there's some music, but I don't think that it's like a traditional musical, though.
Okay.
I mean, Cameron Diaz, was it probably a smart career move to be Miss Hannigan? Probably not.
She's so rich. She doesn't have to make any career moves. Whatever she does is just because she just wants to have some fun and work with some buddies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, any final thoughts on Annie before we wrap this up? I mean, we love it. It's right now. It's not streaming on anything for
I feel
free.
like
you gotta
it's
rent
always
it.
on TCM,
but it's off and on
something.
Yeah.
And we had to rent this,
It's
which
off
I
and
was
on.
kind of shocked on.
Yeah.
So I know that this is one of those movies that even though I get impatient with it when I sit down and watch it now, there is an undeniable quality about it that does send me back to being a kid.
Yeah,
and I think it's the early scenes of the movie too.
Exactly. I think also because as a kid, like you watch the early scenes most,
and you probably weren't finishing it. Yeah,
I think I've seen the first half of Sound of Music a million times, and I've seen the whole movie 3 times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's that thing when if you have the VHS, you start it and then you never finish it. Yeah. And this is definitely one of those, and it's front heavy for the kids. You know, like we said, I got impatient when I was like, "Where's Annie? Where are the girls?" You know, so. I love it because of that nostalgia. So,
yeah, same, and I think it exists as in like 5 time capsules because it's like Hollywood's version of the 30s too. It's the 1982's version of Hollywood in 1930. It's like huge muscular filmmaking. That's kind of the waste of money aside.
Sure.
It definitely inspired some filmmakers.
Yeah, I mean the type of filmmaking that you really don't see a lot anymore. I mean, now when you see this type of filmmaking, it's stuff like Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see Babylon, which I know is very different. I mean, did you guys see it?
I saw Babylon, Christmas Eve, empty theater. I was the only one in it. Babylon is one of those movies that I think that there's a solid 70 minutes of it, but it's over 3 hours long.
I mean, I have to tell you, and we've discussed this for many years. We're all pop culture. I love pop culture, but the pandemic changed me a little bit. It is not life or death, Damien Chazelle. And so I'm kind of happy it failed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not all pressed up against the glass dying to be you. We're living our lives. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and there
absolutely.
was a feeling.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And Annie's not like that.
There's not all of these people snorting coke in a movie set in the 30s. That was my thing about watching Babylon. I'm just like, were this many people snorting cocaine? It's like I just assumed that everybody just drank themselves to death in the 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Or like laudanum or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or it's like it's that, or like LSD or whatever that first thing that came out. And also this feeling of like, and we're done watching movies that feel like it's like the popular kids put up a camera at the house and we're not invited, but we're all supposed to watch it on Zoom and give them like more followers. I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
You know what
I mean, I'm sure Damien Chazelle will rebound because he's a good looking white guy in Hollywood. I'm sure he'll be fine.
He'll get a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th chance. But enough about Damien Chazelle. Our favorite movie.
You know what I was thinking, Brad? So I met you writing film reviews for Screen Picks. Do you remember going to the press screening of Jupiter Ascending at the ArcLight? I saw that with you.
You talk about another bonkers way up. But you want to hear something funny? I see now Lana Wachowski. She lives in Chicago and in Andersonville and like frequents our gay bar.
Oh, I love that.
It's just it's like all full circle from there.
Wow.
But yeah, talk about a bonkers movie.
Yeah.
That's another conversation of where think that's going to land, Scott, in like 20 years.
Is it going to be a weird cult thing?
I think so because of Channing Tatum on rollerblades. You know what I mean? For like half, or what are they on? Like laser blades? Anyway, another conversation. But yes,
Oh boy. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again, Brad. This was great. This was so much fun.
A movie that I've been wanting to get to for a while, so I was glad when you mentioned that in your text back of movies to talk about. So I had to jump at the opportunity to talk about Annie.
Well, this movie definitely made me gay, Ted Cruz.
I feel like a very specific gay little boy was into Annie too. It's a type. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's the three of us. Oh boy.
Well, thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you on again as always. But until then, we'll say goodbye. We'll let you go. Thank you so much, man.
See you later, Brad.
See you later.
Bye.
And thank you so much for listening, everybody. Also, a big old thanks to Brad for coming on our show for this Hard Knock episode. But yeah, Annie, guys, what a picture. What a flick. That is a movie. Like, they don't make them anymore. But yeah, thanks for listening. This was a lot of fun having old Brad back on the show. And but I think actually it is just about that time for some Patreon shout-outs. I want to say a very big hello and thank you so much to all of our patrons, including Dan, Frank, Furter, Whirlyflower, Lori, Brenna, Jess Rabbit 45, Lawrence, Danielle, Lisa, Alexis, Thomas, Mark, Jackson, Millie, Ted, Benny, Jermel, Melanie, Susan, JJ, Shelby, Michael, Heather, Jamie, Drew, Genevieve, Dawn, Joshua, Emma Melly, Aaron, Jessica, Nick and Shannon, Christine, and Rufino. Thank you guys so much for being patrons. And if you want to check out what we have to offer on our Patreon, head over to www.patreon.com/moviesthatmadeusgay. And you can see all the fun stuff we have on there. We've got we've got 3 tiers, 3 options for you to for your donations, and you can check out what there is available there, including bonus episodes in the form of Watch With Us commentary tracks. We watch a different movie, a bonus movie every month, and we record a commentary. So it's just like you're watching the movie with us. You could sync it up to the movie, or you can just listen to it like a bonus episode. They're lots of fun. There's over 25 of those, I think, at this point. And yeah, you'll have access to all of those. There are also our monthly newsletters. There are behind-the-scenes photos. There are seasonal playlists, a bunch of really fun stuff over on Patreon. And if you don't want to or can't afford to do a monthly subscription, 1-month subscription works out just fine. It's a 1-month donation, and for those 30 days, you'll be able to access everything at that tier. And then once it's over, boom, you're done. So easy as pie. Patreon.com/moviesthatmadeusgay. So check that out for more. We would also love it if you would like and subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or if you're on Spotify, give us 5 stars. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and write us a review, and we'll read any new reviews on upcoming episodes. So that's a lot of fun, and we love it when you write reviews. We love it when you give us those 5 stars. It really helps us to get seen by more people, and it's very helpful, and it makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside every time we do it. So thank you very much. If you'd like to follow us on socials, we are at Movies That Made Us Gay on Instagram and on Facebook. And on Twitter, we are at MTMUG Pod. If you want to follow our personals, feel free. My name's Pete. I'm at Peter Lasagna on Instagram and Twitter. Scott is at Scott Youngballer on Instagram. And give his Letterboxd a follow. So thank you so much once again for listening. We will see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.